Hello, and a warm welcome to our show, Love Athletics. In this program, we bring you the latest highlights from our sport with expert input from different continental areas. And we're delighted to have as our guest today British journalist Mike Rowbottom. Hello, Mike. Lovely to see you, and a big thank you for joining us. Now, before we focus on the athletics news of the last fortnight, including the London Marathon, I'd like to start by learning more about our guest. So, Mike, I've known you for many years, but never asked you, what motivated you to get involved in athletics and start a career as a sports journalist?
I don't know what first attracted me to athletics. I do know for sure it was not any kind of athletics ability. I think it was really down to a games master who arrived at our school and got everybody interested in running, doing cross country athletics events. And one day he took a group of us to the 3A's championships at Crystal Palace in '73, and it was we could get really close to the track, and I got a lot of autographs from some runners, Pascoe, Andy Carter, David Jenkins, all of whom I was following quite diligently at the time. I was starting to fill scrapbooks up. I'd started a bit earlier and done stuff for the '72 Olympics. So but the games master, he was a runner himself. He was steeplechaser. He ran in the 3A's championships, and he was just a brilliant teacher. And he got loads of people running, some really talented runners at our school, and he was inspirational. So I always remember that day. But sadly, I also remembered it was the day after one of my great idols of the early athletics interest broke the world record at Crystal Palace. It was the day after Dave Bedford ran 27:30.8 for the 10K. And there was hardly anybody there apart from the national press. So I've still got John Rodder of The Guardian's report of that wonderful event. But yeah, I followed Bedford at the time, and I do remember watching the '72 Olympics, and I got involved in probably the only fight I've had with my brother because he said something when Dave Bedford failed to get a medal in either the 5 or the 10,000. Emotions ran high in our household, and somebody had to pay, and it was my younger brother. I thought that was fair. Anyway, he was one of my big old heroes, Dave Bedford, and still is, because he's a great guy. Love his attitude, and obviously what he's done for the London Marathon. In terms of other people who've been inspiring, well, I can remember performances, people who have just really thrilled me, I guess. One of them would be Wilson Kipketer. I covered him in the Euro in Paris, and when he broke the world indoor record twice in the heats and the final. But it wasn't even the times that he ran, which were phenomenal. And of course, he went on to break the world record outdoors as well. But it was just the way he moved. I've never seen anything like it. And again, you could get really close indoors. He was like something from another planet running in front of a group of humans. He was just a wonderful, graceful sight. And I don't think that, by then I was pretty used to going down to the 3A's at Birmingham or whatever, and you didn't get a lot of that at Alexander Stadium back in those days. So it was just wonderful. And in terms of nowadays, there's just so many athletes I've seen because I'm so old. But Yulimar Rojas has still got that something. Again, she's got a similar quality, I think, in terms of how incredibly athletic, wonderfully athletic she is. And okay, I've seen her get the world record, I've seen her get the Olympic gold medal, but it's beyond that. It's something about the joy she communicates and the way she manages to, in an event which is not always the easiest to connect to the crowd with, how she manages to emote and let you know what she's feeling, and even down to quite fine shades of feelings, such as she does a jump which most triple jumpers would never reach in their lifetime, but it's slightly below what she was looking for, i.e. probably a world record. And she, I don't know what she does, but she manages to convey that it was a decent effort, but she's already looking to the stand to her coach to work out exactly how she could be better next time. So this is a bit random out of all the many athletes that I've seen, but those are some of the reasons why I got interested in athletics and why I kept being interested in athletics. In terms of me, I was never an athlete. I ran once at Woodside Stadium in a 3,000 metres race where I knew I was going to lose because the two other guys in the race had running spikes, and my friend from school had just broken the school record. So I trudged along in my Adidas ROM trainers and came fourth out of four and resolved to stick to football, which I did until in my later years when I did get involved in running half marathons and marathons a bit, which was another world, which was great. But yeah, that's so no, there's no big background to me in terms of my athletics interest, but it just is an interest and continues to be so.
What were your three favorite athletics moments in the course of your career?
Three greatest athletics moments, I hear you say. Well, funny you should mention that because I have three that have come to mind, although choosing them is almost impossible. So I'll probably, as soon as I finish, go, oh God, how could I not mention X? But anyway, I'm going to start off with Roger Black returning to glory at the 96 3A's trials in Birmingham. He had a prodigious start to his career from nowhere. He was in '86. He was the Commonwealth and then European champion, beating Olympic finalists and Schoenleber, the East German, running a British record. This big, strong, looked like a rugby player. Good-looking boy. The girls liked him. The boys admired him. Nicely spoken. Medical student, ex-medical student. So he ticked all the boxes, and then the injuries happened, and it was savage for him. And he showed incredible guts to retain that European title in 1990. And again, injuries, and took him round to 94. He got the world silver in 91, but then he had more injuries. So it was always an up and down thing with Roger. Fantastic natural athlete, injured a lot, but he had a kind of wonderful renaissance towards the end of his career, and it happened in '96. The fruits of it were proven when he came to the trials. Now, at the time, there were some very, very good runners around for Britain. There was Jamie Balch, Dwayne Ledejo, and of course Ewan Thomas. These were all top-notch guys, so you couldn't know who was going to win that race. I don't think it was any secret that Roger Black and Dwayne Ledejo didn't get on terribly well. I don't think Dwayne Ledejo showboating down the final straight after his three compadres had set him up to win the European title won him many brownie points, but anyway, they were different people, and Roger Black and Dwayne didn't love each other. Anyway, Roger ran the race, and he finally got himself right with a lot of advice from David Jenkins, controversially, as he had served time in jail for trafficking drugs, nothing to do with sport, just drugs. But, if Roger Black wasn't clean, then I'll stop writing about athletics. So there you go. He ran a British record, regained the British record, 44.39, and it was just a wonderful restatement of his abilities. And he went on to win the silver medal in the individual event behind Michael Johnson and in the relay. So it was fantastic. It was a great race, and afterwards there was an even better. No, it wasn't a better press conference, but it was a great press conference where Roger Black and Dwayne Ledejo basically got into a big disagreement. Ledejo said that the British record would be his by the end of the season. Roger got a bit cross. tempers rose, things were said, and a bet was struck for £1,000. And at the end of the season, Dwayne LaDeja had to pay up £1,000. He wanted to do some kind of charity thing. Roger said, no, just give me the money. And he took out all his friends, including John Ridgeon and Dwayne, Daley Thompson. They all had a marvellous evening. And the toast between each round of food was Dwayne LaDeja. I've said too much about that probably, but the next amazing moment, Karsten Warholm at the Tokyo 2020 Games. I saw Karsten Warholm running in Oslo before he won the world title in 2017. He was good, but he wasn't expected to be as good as he was so quickly. He won that world title, and he retained it in Doha. But in between he had a really difficult year where Abdurrahman Samba came through suddenly from Qatar and just beat him every time. So Karsten was getting quicker and quicker, and he was the world champion, but he was still losing. But admirably, I thought, he didn't disappear, he didn't evade it, he just kept coming round for another go. And who knew then, where he was going to go. So that was 2018, but 2021, the delayed Tokyo Games, there he is in all his glory, in one of the most astonishing races I've ever seen. And he wins in 45.94. And it was another world. And indeed, Rai Benjamin broke the previous world record as well, getting silver. And Alison Santos just missed it in getting bronze. A stupendous race, just one of the greatest races ever. But yet again, Karsten had just managed to win it. He's a lovely, lovely guy, one of the most interesting and funny people on the circuit ever. And his coach also, Leif, is just cracks you up from the moment he starts speaking. So they're a lovely pair. But it was sweet indeed to see that, but it was a wonderful race.
Karsten Warholm's run in Tokyo was indeed amazing.
Final thing again, I'll just say, there's so many things, but Tokyo again, Mutaz Barshim and Gianmarco Tamberi deciding in the end of that long steamy night of competition when they couldn't be separated, do you know what? Why don't we both have a gold medal? It was just wonderful. And again, they'd all had horrible injuries. Barshim, all kinds of Achilles problems. I'd been to Rome to interview Tamberi in 2016 when he was getting seriously good before the Olympics. I think he did 2:39. He did in Monaco, and then he was going for 2:41. I think. The final thing before he went off to Rio, and I think it might have been his third attempt, but he just wrecked his ankle and he was out, not just for the Olympics, but for a long, long time. Coincidentally, I got the same flight from Paris to Tokyo, to Rio, and back again with the Italian team. So I saw him on the plane looking very sad, very melancholy, very romantic lead. And then 5 years later in Tokyo, that happens. They can't be separated. And as part of his celebrations, he's got the plaster cast, which he wore in Rio. You couldn't make it up. But what I loved most of all was that kind of conversation between the two of them when they were making their judgment, standing there deciding what to do with the judge. And I think it was Mutaz who asked the judge, could we share it, or could we both have the gold? And when the judge accepted that was an option, from that point on, these two jumpers were on a different wavelength. The judge might have been on Alpha Centauri; it didn't matter anymore. He'd said a possibility, and they just looked. Mutaz and Gianmarco, who are friends as well as rivals, they just looked at each other, and then suddenly this amazing idea just sort of formed between them. And almost without word, I don't know if they spoke to each other, suddenly it was like nods, I don't know. And then Tamberi, who's somewhat flamboyant, immediately leapt on him like some kind of crazed monkey, and it was just, yeah, why not? And why go through some hideous business going back down all the way down to God knows what, so you can do your friend out of a gold medal. I thought it was lovely. Some people said, no, it's all about winning. You've got to keep going to find out who's the winner. Yeah, well, no. It was one of the sweetest, loveliest moments of sport, sharing something, and unforgettable.
Yes, Mutaz and Gianmarco was a very special moment among two great friends who had gone through similar injuries. We will come back to learn more about our guest, but let's look now at what's been happening in our sport over the last fortnight, starting with road races. On the 23rd of April, the London Marathon took place, and what an amazing race that was. In the men's race, Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum confirmed his talent. He had run a stunning sub 2 hours, 2 minutes debut in Valencia in December, and he now won London in 2 hours 01:25, just 16 seconds off the world record. Now, Kiptum's stats in Valencia had been impressive. He had run the second part of the race in 60:05, which was then the fastest ever split, and had clocked 28:05 for the 10-kilometer split between 30K and 40K, while his road PB over the 10 kilometers was 28:17. In London, his splits were even more amazing. He ran the second part of the race in 59:45, further improving the fastest split, and he clocked 27:50 for the 10K split between 30 and 40K. Kiptum left his competitors far behind. A resurgent Geoffrey Kamworor clocked a lifetime best of 2 hours 04:23 per second, but was almost 3 minutes behind the winner, while world champion Tamirat Tola of Ethiopia was third in 2:04:59. Now, Mike, what did you think of the men's race in London?
Brief thoughts from a non-expert on the London Marathon. I thought that I fancied that Kiptum, after that incredible debut, fastest debut ever in Valencia, would win. And especially as Kipchoge wasn't in the race. Then again, Kipchoge had actually been beaten in Boston, once again shown to be human a little bit a week earlier. So what I was impressed with was the self-control and the confidence that Kiptum showed, and the decisiveness in which he waited and then made his move, and then there was nobody near him. It was calculating, and it was incredibly impressive. And when you think that this guy's 23, I don't see that he's any great shakes on the track, although maybe he would be if he went back. He's got a 28:27 10K race. He's not a former world champion like Kipchoge was before he moved to the roads. He's gone straight to the roads. So who knows what he can do now? I mean, he's only, I can't remember exactly, but he's only like 25 seconds short of the world record now. He could even be, I mean, there's no point in saying that, put pressure on him, but what an incredible start. He's 23, and if he can keep himself in one piece, he's going to be absolutely thrilling to see what he can do in the next few years.
After Boston, we were speaking about Evans Chebet as a possible challenger to Eliud Kipchoge, but now we definitely need to add Kelvin Kiptum. Now, the women's race was not as fast, but the drama was intense. Track superstar Sifan Hassan, making her marathon debut, reminded everyone just how tough she is. Hassan had stopped to stretch her left leg at the 19th kilometer and was 28 seconds behind the leaders at 25K, but she soldiered on and slowly closed the gap, winning the race in 2:18:33 ahead of Ethiopia's Alemu Megertu 2:18:37 and Kenya's Olympic champion Peres Chepchirchir in 2:18:38. Now, to put Hassan's performance into context, we need to remember that before last year, the fastest ever marathon debut was still Paula Radcliffe's 2:18:56 from the London Marathon back in 2002, a mark slower than Hassan's performance in London. But last year saw a major shake-up as first Yalem Zerf Yehwala winning Hamburg in April, then Almaz Ayana winning Amsterdam in October, and finally Letzenbet Gidey winning coming second in Valencia in December. Each improved that mark, which is now 2 hours 16:49. Now, Mike, this makes you wonder what time Sifan Hassan could have achieved if she hadn't been cramping before mid-race.
Switching again to the women's race, that was again a wonderful, much more interesting, I guess, spectacle. This crazy race that the somewhat crazy Sifan Hassan ran. She's always been a bit unpredictable. Sometimes brilliant, sometimes not. In her speech as well, she's pretty unpredictable. Everybody saw what happened. It looked like she made a bit of a mistake, got it all wrong. And wise counsels were saying that she should just drop out now once she started cramping up and having problems after 19K. Don't muck up your World Championship chances, because that's what she planned to do in the summer, to run on the track. The wise counsel was, listen to your body, out you go, it's not going to happen for you today. Instead of which she just crashed on. She was nearly 30 seconds behind the leaders being the Olympic champion, the defending champion, experienced runners. It was her first time ever. And yeah, we all saw it. It was an amazing prospect. She got closer and closer. Oh, perhaps she's done it too fast. She'll pay for that when it comes to the final sprint. But when it came to the final sprint, she sprinted home first and then looked very surprised. So the whole thing was notable, unusual. But the thing is, before the race, she'd said in the press conference how she was very nervous, but at the same time she was very curious. And she also said, I think that I'll run my second marathon will be better. Well, if your first marathon wins you the London Marathon title ahead of the Olympic champion and the defending champion, high quality racer, that's your first race, and your second one's going to be better. That's going to be something well worth waiting for. It'll probably be an autumn marathon later this year, if all goes well for her in terms of fitness and in terms of the World Championships in Budapest. But that's going to be one to watch.
Amazing Sifan Hassan. As we reach the first half of the marathon season, let's review the road season so far. Here we have the winners of the major marathons contested so far. So a great Kenyan dominance among the women, where only Sifan Hassan, competing for the Netherlands, took a marathon. In the men, again, 3 wins by Kenya in the last races, but also Ethiopia's Chaludeso Gelmisa in Tokyo and Bashir Abdi of Belgium in Rotterdam. And here are the top 10 performances registered so far this year in the marathon. Among the women, the early races in Japan in March are still the best, with Rosemary Wanjiru's 2 hours 16:28 in Tokyo, by far the best mark. But London really shook up the world lists, and we now have 5 athletes who competed in London in the top 10 from place 4 to 8. Among the men, of course, Kelvin Kiptum's stunning mark in London, which brings him to number 2 in the all-time list, is by far the best and is the first performance over 1,300 points this year. Again, London and Hamburg last weekend also shook up the lists, but Bashir Abdi remains in number 2 in Rotterdam and Timothy Kiplagat in number 3. So, Mike, what was your biggest takeaway from this early part of 2003 road racing seasons?
If there is a takeaway to take away from the road racing so far, and particularly after the London Marathon, I suppose, particularly given the victories of Kiptum and Sifan, it looks like a bit of a new wave coming through. It could be a new wave coming through. Also, the fact that we've had such very, very good, particularly women's performances from Chet Ngetic and Amand Berisseau, 2:14 runs, Tigust Asefa as well, 2:15. Incredibly fast times coming more widely spread now. That might be a result of the shoes, or whichever make they may be. Another point of debate, but whatever the weather, we've got a new phalanx of very, very fast female runners in particular, and then men's runners like Kiptum coming through. So it feels like people can cavil at it maybe. We'll never know exactly what all the factors are about it, but it certainly looks in terms of results like a new wave of marathon talent coming through, and who knows, before long beginning to outdo the icons of the last few years.
Thank you, Mike. Now, the Adizero Road to Records event in Herzogenaurach on 29 April saw some high-level competitions, though it did not quite replicate the outstanding senior results of the first 2 editions. The best overall performance was Kenya's Sebastian Kimaru Sawe, who clocked 26:49 over 10 kilometers, turning the tables on compatriot Kibiwot Kandie, who had beaten him into second place last year. And with that performance, he moved into number 5 in the all-time list. Among the women, the top performance came from 18-year-old Ethiopian Medina Eza, who was victorious in the 5 kilometers race in 14:46, improving the world under 20 best. But as we will see later, there were other great performances by under 20 and under 18 athletes. Now it's time to move off the roads and onto stadium events, starting with US meets, where 2 South American records were set on 21 April in Palo Alto, both over 5,000 meters. In the men's race, Argentina's Federico Bruno clocked 13:11:50.57, improving the continental record by almost 8 seconds. The mark also takes him to the top of the 2023 season's list. In the women's race, Venezuela's Jocelyn Danieli Brea clocked 15:05.56, a massive improvement of just over 16 seconds to the South American record. And like Bruno, Brea's mark is also an early world lead. On 20 April in Charlottesville, hammer throw world champion Brooke Anderson achieved an excellent throw of 79 meters 80 to climb to number 3 in the all-time list. And a week later at Drake Relays, Anderson confirmed her good form with a throw of 78:69, another excellent mark for an athlete who until the start of this year had a PB of 79 meters 02 and had only thrown over 78 meters in two other competitions, including the World Championships in Oregon. Other great marks from the Drake relays came from the men's shot put, which first was contested indoor to give double Olympic champion Ryan Crouser the chance to set a great mark after his 23 meters 38 from 18 February was not ratified as a world record, as the track in Pocatello was not certified and the circle was not in compliance with World Athletics rules. So Crouser threw an excellent 22 meters 42 indoors on 26 April, the second best indoor mark of the year. And 3 years later, in an outdoor competition under heavy rain, Crouser heaved the shot to what was then a world-leading 22 meters 38. But later the same day, US rival Joe Kovacs went even further, throwing a 22.69 in his season opener in Nashville. Isn't it interesting that the US now is a throws powerhouse, not only in the men, but also among the women? At the end of last year, the top list had US ladies in the number one spot in all the throwing events. And two US women earned titles at the World Championships, Tace Ely in the shot put and Brooke Anderson in the hammer, where Jenny Casanavoid was third. And among the men, of course, epic podium sweep by US athletes in the shot put with Ryan Crouser, Joe Kovacs, and Josh Awotunde. So also on 29 April, the Botswana Golden Grand Prix took place in Gaborone. Top marks came in the sprints. Zambia's 20-year-old Muzala Samukonga, who had shot into the limelight last summer with surprise 400-meter goals at the African Championships and Commonwealth Games, produced the best performance of the meet, clocking a world-leading 43.91. Another young African sprinter, Botswana's Letsile Tebogo, also clocked a world-leading mark with a regular 19.87 over 200 meters, after coming second to Kenya's Ferdinand Omanyala in a windy 100-meter race with 9.91 to the Kenyans' 9.78. In the women's events, the best results came from Kenya's world champion 800-meter bronze medalist, Mary Mora, who stepped back down to the 400 to set a PB of 50.44, while US sprinter Shakari Richardson was defeated over 200 meters by compatriot Kyla White, who clocked 22.38 to Richardson's 22.54. Now, Mike, you had seen Muzala Samukonga compete at the Commonwealth Games. He is definitely showing he was no shooting star.
Muzala Samukonga of Zambia, what a performer, what a phenomenon. I was in Birmingham last summer, and like most of the crowd, I'll say I was expecting, I wouldn't say hoping, because we're strictly neutral in the press. But Matthew was already possessor of a bronze medal from the World Championships, and he ran a really, really good race in front of his home crowd. He was born 13 miles away, I think, and he looked set to get a Commonwealth gold, and would have done. And in a way, he did win the race. It's just that this crazy guy in lane 8, who was 6th or so on the final bend, switched on incredible afterburners and ran like a loon, and passed him just at the point where Mr. Hudson Smith had nothing that he could do. He was through. The race was over. This guy just flashed by him on his right at the last second. It was an incredible race, and all more incredible for the fact that the gold medalist, when he run in the heats, he'd run a PB of 44.89, I think, but he exhausted himself so much that he had to be taken off the track on a stretcher, and yet this was the gold medalist. So he took it easy in the semis, but again he beat his personal best, lowered his personal best again in the final on 44 low bits. I can't remember what it was, 6.6 it was. So again, that was exactly the time that Matthew Hudson-Smith ran in Oregon to get the bronze medal earlier in the summer. And this year, this year's Samukonga's run 43 something. I mean, that's another incredible step, and that's before the season's even really warmed up. So who knows what he's going to be capable of now, because 44.66, that's good, but when you start running 43, ain't no Brits been able to run a 43, not by a long chalk, not yet. So he's into big fast territory now, and who knows where that's going to end.
Letsile Tebogo, of course, needs no introductions. After shining as an under-20 athlete, he is now making his mark in the senior ranks. However, later on the same day in Lubbock, Texas, another talented African sprinter, Ghana's James Dadzie, improved the world lead over 200 meters to 19.79, and he also ran a windy 9.89 in the 100 meters. Dadzie, who turns 22 next month, went to study in the US at the beginning of this academic year, and World Athletics has no results for him before 2022. Young African sprinters are registering great performances, and the most interesting thing I find is that under 23 athletes from many different countries, Botswana, Ghana, Liberia, Uganda, are shining on the world scene, joining established stars like Kenya's Omanyala, who is 27, and South Africa's Akani Simbine, who is 29. Let's close the stadium events overview with the Garda Multi-Stars combined events meet in Desenzano del Garda, where early world leads were set by Estonia's Karel Tiga, who dominated the decathlon with 8,482 points, while the USA's Talia Brooks totaled 6,330 points in the heptathlon. Now, the African under-20 and under-18 championships took place from 29 April to 3 May in Ndola, Zambia, but we will review this competition in detail in the next show. So it's time now to look at the best results of the past fortnight, starting with men's events. Top performance of 2023 is now Kelvin Kiptum's mark in the London Marathon, but there were also excellent shot put marks and interesting sprints results, albeit mostly wind aided. So we saw great windy marks in the 100 meters in Gaborone, but also in Clermont in Florida, where US sprinter Isamade Asinga, whom we remember has two parents who were both athletes, his mother from Zambia, a sprinter from Zambia, and his father in 800 meters from Suriname. He clocked excellent marks of 9.83 and 9.86 with an even stronger wind in Clermont, as well as a 9.89 in Lubbock. James Dadzie, windy, as we saw. Over 200, we already saw James Dadzie and Letsile Tebogo. Also very good marks in Lubbock from Courtney Lindsay and again Isamade Asinga. 400 meters, we saw Muzala Samukonga of Zambia in Gaborone. Over 10K, in the Adizero Road to Records in Herzogenaurach, very good marks by the top 3 athletes still behind Berihu Aregawi, who in early March recorded the number 2 mark of all times. In the marathon, Kelvin Kiptoom's extraordinary mark, of course, tops them all. Pole vault, Sondre Guttormsen of Norway jumped 5 meters 90 on 29 April in Stockholm. And as we saw, great marks in the shot put by Ryan Krauser and then bettered by Joe Kovacs. Discus throw, Mykolas Alekna, the son of Lithuanian great, threw 71 meters in Berkeley, which is an area under 23 record. On the women's side, the most interesting marks of the last 2 weeks also came from the winner of the London Marathon, Sifan Hassan, and from a thrower, Brooke Anderson. There were some good marks in the sprints by Shericka Jackson and Aliyah Hobbs, both under 10.9. In the 10K in Herzogenaurach, Irene Kipchumba Kimais with 12.26, but still far behind Yalemzerf Yehuala's 29.19. In the marathon, we saw London Marathon shaking up the world lists. And hammer throw, as we already said, 2 great throws by Brooke Anderson. So the top women's performance of the year remains Yalemzerf Yehuala's 2019 in the 10K. Now, several under 20 and under 18 athletes also registered great performances over the past fortnight. Starting with the men's under 20, we already mentioned Isam Asinga with a windy 9.83 and regular 9.97 in the 200. So after moving to number 10 in the all-time 200 under 20 lists over 200 meters in early April, he confirmed his talent and is now number 6 in the under 20 lists of all time in the 200. Among the women's, 17-year-old Senayet Getachew, the world under 20 cross-country champion last February, clocked 30.34 over the 10K when finishing 5th in Herzogenaurach to set a world under 18 and under 20 best. Her 18-year-old compatriot, Mebrat Gidey, finished 11th in 31.24 to move up to number 7 in the under 20 all-time lists. And in the half marathon, always in Herzogenaurach, winner Berkutan Welde, still 18, moved into number 2 spot in the under 20 all-time lists with 1 hour 07:44. And Jamaica's high hurdler Kerika Hill, who had won World Under 20 gold last year in Cali in her specialist event and in the sprint relay, clocked 12.75 over the 100 hurdles on 22 April in Kingston to become equal number 3 on the under 20 all-time lists. Among the under 18 athletes, on 23 April in Clermont, Florida, the British Virgin Islands Ayadeja Hodge first clocked 11:16 in the heats, then bettered that to 11.12, which is the 5th best under 18 mark of all time. And she had also won the 200 in a windy 22.76. 6 days later in Lubbock, Hodge took another 100th off her PB and national record, bringing it to 11.11. And finally, at the Asian Under 18 Championships in Tashkent, China's Tian Xinyi moved to equal ninth spot in the under-18 all-time shot put lists with a winning throw of 18 meters 56. And talking about talented young athletes, China's 14-year-old sprinter Chen Yujie ran an excellent 11.63 over the 100 meters and followed it up the next day with 23.91 into a minus 2.3 headwind over the double distance in Ningbo. Now, we've been talking about under 20s, under 18s, and even 14-year-olds, but one of the beauties of our sport is how competitors of all ages achieve more amazing performances. And two more were registered in the last 2 weeks by two great athletes. Slovakia's hammer thrower, Martina Harasnova, the 2009 World Championship bronze medalist and double European silver medalist, who turned 40 last month, threw 68 meters 01 in Košice on 22 April, bettering the age category record, which had stood for almost 7 years. And Kenya's Mark Kosgei Kipto, African champion and Commonwealth bronze medalist over 5,000 meters, won the Zurich Marathon on 23 April in 2 hours 09:12 to become the first over 45 athletes to run the distance in under 2 hours 10. The previous record belonged to Bernard Lagat, and Kipto improved it by just under 5 seconds. So huge congratulations to Martina and Mark. And I'd like now to highlight some cool athletics news. Kenya's Samuel Milo won the Vienna City Marathon on 23 April in a course record, saving the best for last with a final kilometer run in 2:44, the fastest in the whole race. Watch Athletics reported that Milo hails from Taita Taveta County on the border with Tanzania, and noticing that running is not very popular in his area, decided to organize a 10-kilometer race in his native village of Ulawani to be held at the beginning of May, and to assist young athletes with guidance and financial support to pay their school fees. Congratulations, Samuel Milo. And I'd also like to highlight two very special birthdays. The great Haile Gebrselassie, whom we see here in the epic photo finish finale of the Olympic 10,000 meters in Sydney, turned 50 on 18 April. The double Olympic champion and quadruple world indoor and outdoor champion had an extraordinary career, setting a total of 20 world records, 15 outdoor and 5 indoor, on distances from 3,000 meters to the marathon. And before the Usain Bolt era, Haile was one of the very few athletes recognized by non-athletics fans. He was often known as the little man with a big smile. In 2004, when we traveled to Ethiopia for a day in the life series, Haile amazed the participating journalists by welcoming us to his new home and serving the food prepared by his wife and sister. A truly inspiring figure. Happy birthday, Haile. And Italy's 1980 high jump Olympic champion Sara Simeoni turned 70 on 19 April. In addition to her Olympic title, Simeoni was a silver medalist in 1976 and 1984. She had set the world record with 2 meters 01 on 4 August 1978 and equaled it on 13 August to take the European title in Prague. Now, Simeoni is an athlete that I always admired since in my early teens, watching her place 6th, aged 19 at the Olympic Games in Munich. And when I later met her in real life, I again found her to be inspiring and a really fun person to be around. Auguroni, Sara. Now, more sad news, unfortunately, as this has been a terrible fortnight in which a number of top protagonists of our sport have left us. We will pay full tributes in the next show, but remember here some of the most successful champions who passed away. So Herb Douglas, long jump bronze medalist for the US, passed away aged 101 on 22 April. Vera Krepkina, sprinter and long jump from Ukraine who competed for the Soviet Union, won gold in the Olympics, 1960 Olympics in the long jump, and had set 3 world records over relays and 100 meters, passed away on 25 April, aged 90. Ralph Boston, a US long jumper who was an Olympic gold medalist in 1960 and set 6 world records in his event, passed away on 30 April, aged 83. US 400 meter and 400 meter hurdler Calvin Davis, who was a bronze medalist at the 1996 Olympic Games over the hurdles, passed away on May 1st, aged 51. And finally, Tori Bowie of the US sprinter and long jump, who was the 2017 gold medalist in the 100 meters, passed away on 3 April, aged only 32. May they all now rest in peace. Let's look now at upcoming events as we reach the end of our show. So as we said tonight, Diamond League kicks off with the first meeting of the series in Doha. Tomorrow, US Los Angeles Track Festival World Continental Tour Silver. On Sunday, the Prague Marathon. On 13 May, we have both the Kip Keino Classic Continental Tour Gold in Keino in Nairobi, and the NACAC New Life Invitation in Grand Bahamas. On 17 May, Philothei Women's Gala in Athens. Then a very busy weekend. On 20 May, night of the 10,000 meters in London. On 21 May, the European Race Walking Team Championships in Podebradi. Then 2 Continental Tour Gold meetings, Seiko Golden Grand Prix in Yokohama, Japan, and the USATF Bermuda Grand Prix in Devonshire, Bermuda. So we're now at the end of our show. It was great having Mike with us. Thank you, Mike, and thank you all for watching. See you in 2 weeks on Love Athletics to look together at the highlights, comments, and analysis of what's been happening in our sport over the last fortnight. Thank you. Bye-bye.